Hi, everybody out there in video land. No, this is Barry Strauber from Carlson Cowork, and this is Carlson Cowork Conversations, episode number 3. We have Jennifer Sertl talking about her company, talking about being an entrepreneur, and just talking about the life that she's now created for herself with what she's doing, and we're going to have fun. So stay tuned. Here we go. Jennifer Sertl is in the house. We want to talk to you a little bit about your company,
okay,
and then just find out a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into other topics. So tell me a little bit about Agility 3R.
Well, so I'm originally from Boulder, Colorado, and I studied existential philosophy and then moved to Rochester, New York when I was 24, and immediately went into call center management and worked at Frontier Corporation and also Blue Cross Blue Shield, and worked for companies that had over 1,000 employees. And I had never considered business as a career. I didn't study business in college, but it ended up that learning about mental models and learning about logic and then learning how to relate to people and understanding that communication. I'm thinking of Wittgenstein, who said that the limits of my language are the limits of my world. And all of a sudden, it became a wonderful time to actually have a background in philosophy and also have experience in business. And so I started a very corporate career and ran into a point where I felt that I was working for an organization that was doing quite well, and they were actually the best in their category across the country. And what I had noticed was that although we were excellent and getting a lot of awards, there was this internal apathy. And at the same time, Thomas Friedman had written The World is Flat. And he had this wonderful proverb that he shared that actually came from Africa that said, every morning a gazelle wakes up, it must outrun the fastest lion. Every morning a lion wakes up, it must outrun the slowest gazelle. In the morning, whether you're a lion or a gazelle, you better start running. And that hit me is that although we were winning, I didn't feel that we were in great condition. And so when I started Agility 3R in 2006, I wanted to start a company that really helped companies, not necessarily in competition, and certainly market share was part of the conversation, but really was about, are you in mental condition, so that if in fact there are changes and disruptions in the market, you actually have the foresight and the discipline in order to pivot.
Right. So essentially, people going out into sort of the battlefield of corporate world, you're giving them strength, and you're giving them the knowledge and the capabilities of being able to succeed in that world. Is that so?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what's really difficult is that so ultimately I'm a behavioralist that has tied behavior into strategy. And so if a company is competing on know-how, adaptability, and velocity, we can go in and create a behavioral model so that individuals in that company know what they can practice to strengthen their ability to make decisions quicker for velocity, their ability to be knowledge experts if it's know-how, and actually to be more flexible if it's adaptability, right? And so the idea is that a brand and a promise to the market is actually made through micro choices, small choices made by employees inside.
Right.
And so if you treat each employee as a branding agent and every decision as a branding amplifier, it then becomes more important how well do people execute inside. And so it's been a lot of fun, but I know I still need to work on how to make it more concrete.
No, it's so interesting. I mean, so the name Agility then.
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind that then?
Well,
because now I see sort of the synergies between what you're doing and being nimble and agile.
Absolutely, and this is where I was so excited because it literally came like a download, is that if in fact I wanted to help people in mental conditioning, I wanted to help them with agility. And then it became, well, what is agility?
Right.
Agility is resilience, responsiveness, and reflection.
Right.
Resilience is how well do we recover and how well can we handle diversity, right? Responsiveness is how alert are we? And rather than respond, it's more about how well are we at anticipating. Because if you're truly responsive, you're actually seeing patterns, and then more, if you see a pattern first, you actually have more lead time to respond. And then reflection is the ability to actually look at things and find patterns. And also allow for synthesis. You know, we are living in an environment where everything is about acquisition. You have all this knowledge and you're reading all the time or whatever. And the issue is that just because you have exposure does not mean you can integrate it.
Right.
You know, people read good to great. And then they come and tell me, Jennifer, I read good to great, now which should I read? And I said, really? Because if it hasn't changed how you operate as a leader, then you can read it again and again and again, as I do. Like there's a few things I do them again and again because it takes time for information to actually change behavior.
Right. Well, to some degree, then every company would need your help, or to some degree, every company would need to go down this path of looking at these things, because at some level, they're all sort of going through the same world and the same challenges, and would need to sort of understand this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say every company needs an outside, I would say every company needs a behavioralist. Every company needs a futurist. Every company needs an advisor, because sometimes the way you think and act, everyone around you thinks and acts the same way. And homogeny, I have a statement that I hope people really get, is that familiarity can be dangerous, right?
Right.
And we live in, I have to say, in the Western culture, in Western New York, we're lucky because we don't have multiple currencies. We don't have a lot of multiple languages, right? There's a lot of things that other people in globalization get practiced in complexity. We don't.
Right.
Everybody looks the same, acts the same. It doesn't act the same, but uses the same amount of money, and I'm getting off track. What I really want to say is that I love to help as many people and companies as I can. Every company needs outside perspective to gain perspective, and there are many really talented advisors to help support that process.
Right. Do you see you have sort of a distinctive proposition, a distinctive sort of value that you bring to it?
Yeah, I would hope so. I've chosen to be a boutique versus a real scalable company, and I think that I have a very integral mind, and that I always weave in. We have 4 generations at work now, and so the examples that you use, and the music that you use, and the images that you use really have to hit. If you ever read Gail Shaley's Passages, it's at all times I'm communicating to 4 generations in the workplace. I happen to think I'm really good at it, and that I have a Jackson Pollock mind. And so I think what makes me unique is that I'm pretty introspective. I'm really well read, and I'm also very brave. And brave in that I ask really hard questions. And I've also gotten thick skin knowing that there's a level of truth a leader can hear. And as a consultant, learning where those thresholds are is very difficult. I've lost some really great work because truth causes severs.
Right.
And so that's why I say I'm brave.
This is an interesting job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's emotional. Because there's an engagement in a relationship that happens. It doesn't sound transactional. It sounds like you go in and start to sort of uncover and get a little deep into the psyche of what's going on, and that like you just said, that might take a little bit of a relationship building, because you don't want someone to just say, no, that's too much. Yeah. Because your intent is to just make it better, to just sort of
Absolutely.
Wow.
I love that you bring that out, because it's rigorous work, and it takes courage. It takes courage both as a facilitator, and it also takes courage of the business. And I have to say that why I love being a boutique is that I've really been able to self-select who I work with, and it is, as you pointed out so well, very intimate. And you have, if you're in the psyche of the company and you're with the psyche in place, you have enormous responsibility.
Right.
And I have to work very hard on my own, with my own coach, with my own stuff, so that I really can be an observer. and brave and have other revenue streams so that my revenue isn't, because I'll tell you, if your money depends on things, it actually impacts your biases. And as much as I try, and I do cognitive bias research and all of that, I know I have bias. And so I hope people hear that the ability to choose who you work with and understanding the enormous responsibility that you have, it's a lot of weight. And I work at a way in which I can handle the weight. And also that I'm really, I have to say, you said the word emotion. I love the people I work with. I feel so lucky to work with them. But being in business now 16 years, it was hard learning what my criteria were. And I would say any entrepreneur that's out there is that as soon as you can, begin to create criteria, and begin now to say who you'll say no to and why. Because as you begin to do that early on, not only do you actually create more specificity, it just makes it easier because you will have to say, no, I don't want to work with you. It's a hard conversation to have.
But the best thing you can do.
It is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, because you won't be successful.
You won't be successful. And I think that if you really want to differentiate yourself, you differentiate yourself more by what you say no to than what you say yes to.
Yeah, in business I would say that. The deselection.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because it makes you sort of stand out as someone who knows who you are.
Yes.
Put a stake in the ground and say, this is what I do,
Yes.
This sort of segues really nicely into who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And I know you a little bit. I know, and the interesting sort of aspect of your personality, you would almost have to have a very sort of interesting personality to be able to do a job like that.
Yeah.
You'd have to be compassionate and understand the psyche of people in really stressful situations. And does your sort of inner DNA work well with the job every day? Is that why you seem to love it? Is because you've matched the passion that you have inside of you to help people, so now you can do this job every day in a way that makes sense for you, that maybe somebody else would have a hard time going into?
I think what I would like to do is ask that everyone hearing this program think about what they did naturally between the ages of 5 and 8. Between the ages of 5 and 8, you don't yet experience shame or feel as much pressure, although it's changing, right, of what you think you should do. Because I think that a lot of people went into careers and are now at a point where they're learning in the gig economy that they have to pivot. And instead of pivot for responsibility, people are pivoting towards passion, right? And a lot of insight in what you're great at happened before you knew you had to get a job. So I'd remind people that. What I found as a coach, I did CEO roundtables for Vistage for a while and all of this, I found that a lot of the value came when I was a listener, when I was a mirror, and when I brought in poetry. You know what I mean? So I started to learn, it took a decade, right? Thank God it didn't take me decades,
Well, it's interesting that you didn't go down sort of a proven path of what other executive coaches, you're not saying like, gee, I looked at the competitive landscape and I said, well, they're doing this and this is great. You created this very unique path. You've looked at your life and sort of used it as a leverage and a foundation for creating a really unique path that really truly helps people.
And that's so beautiful that you say, because you walk the path by walking. I wouldn't know what I would need except I'd be listening to someone and I'd say, oh my God, I wonder if this poem will help. I wonder if this song will help. Oh my gosh. And I didn't even know like what other people are doing because I was so into who are you. Boy, do I have ideas for you guys.
Well, what's interesting about the entrepreneurial experience is that I find most entrepreneurs, when they're really successful, do the same process, which is they look at who they are as people. They sort of go through this process, and they do a job that you, from the surface perception, think that, well, that's like you're an executive coach. You do that, and when you realize what they're doing is they've taken who they are as people. And they've taken that position, that job, and they've made it so their own that you're not really doing it like anybody else. You're doing it in a way that sort of maximizes who you are, which is sort of a win-win thing. You're doing a great job for the people that you do a job for, but you're also using everything you have. You're sort of giving it your life story, which is great. Do you love it though? Do you think is it still, after all these years, is it still very rewarding when you go into a company and you actually make a huge impact?
I'm like, are you kidding, Barry? There's a tipping point going on right now. Really, like at first it was literally, who can I find that values this? But right now,
Yeah.
there's a huge tipping point. You know, in your branding work, right? Everyone is working to, how do we manufacture authenticity, right?
Right.
You know, so I have to say,
Transparency and
yes,
authenticity.
I would say the work is getting less heavy and more rewarding, in part because of the macro and things that have changed. And also teachers like you, I know when you go and teach, I mean, I love the fact that your work tells young men and women between 18 and 22 how important their point of view is in their life. Like, you're telling them things that we have, you know, I'm sounding like a grandmother, like, oh, we had to work forever to get there. But the work that you do is
But
so
I think it
permanent.
starts, maybe, and it's
Yes.
interesting how we sort of have that synergy together,
Yes.
because I'm telling them at a young age,
Yes.
you can do whatever you want to do. And
Yes.
there's a sense of like creating that inner person of who you are and understanding that and cultivating that so you can then match that and see your place in the world.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and you're just sort of been taking that as people can, have businesses and start to have companies using who they are
Yes.
to create sort of a much better place for them. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sort of interesting. Yeah,
It's so rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.